It's Kia,
And Tia.
and welcome to our channel.
So today we're going to talk about speech pathology and speech pathology assistant or speech therapy assistant in the setting and also the workplace and what goes on as a speech therapy assistant.
So stay tuned, y'all. So as you guys know, we're gonna be talking about SLPs and SLPAs, but actually we're going to be referring to SLPAs in this video. You do need to understand that there is a difference. People with their master's degree are SLPs, and people with their bachelor's is an SLPA. So we're referring to SLPAs in this video. We are also talking about the home health setting specifically, and we are based in Texas. So we're referring to Texas only. I don't know how everything goes in other states and things of that sort, but we're only referring to Texas in this video.
And so just to put an input on, we were speech therapy assistants. So that's the reason why we're mainly, talking about SLPAs. So as far as an SLPA, the reason being that we chose this career. Okay, so as for my personal story on why I chose to go into the speech therapy field, as a child, I used to stutter, and it made me feel out of place. It made me feel like a misfit, as a child, because when I was at school, most of the kids, they weren't stuttering. And I was like this, odd egg, sitting out to the side. And I wondered like, hey, why am I sounding so different? And as for my family and my mom, it was kind of, come to find out, a genetic thing. It ran in the family, like stuttering. So to them, it wasn't a big problem. And they didn't see anything different. They were like, oh, okay, you sound just fine. You're fine. You okay. But to the other kids, it was just different. So, I told mom, after crying so much and feeling, out of place and feeling bad because the kids, they were, teasing me. And I was just this girl that talking weird to them. So I told my mom, like, something's wrong, something's wrong. God, what's wrong with me? And my mom, she ended up putting me in speech therapy. I had speech therapy 4 years from first grade to fourth. And the therapist is so remarkable. Like, she was amazing, sweet, kind, and she literally changed my life. Like, she changed my life. She made me, very uplifted. And, from then on, I was like, I want to be just like her. So, that was kind of like my personal passion, and it's why I chose the major. Yeah.
So as you guys may know, we are sharing our personal stories or experiences of why we chose this career path. For me, I would have to say it's for many reasons. I had a family member who struggled with their speech, and they ended up receiving sessions, speech therapy services, and they were in it for quite a while. And after they had their sessions, I just noticed a remarkable difference and so much improvement. And also, it was an improvement in the way this person's attitude was and their feelings about themselves, especially, with a young child. It can really affect you. And so that kind of like triggered something or sparked interest. Also with myself, you may hear me, my lisp. I've had it since I was younger. I did end up getting my tongue clipped when I was a young child, and also I've had braces before, so that kind of like altered the way that I speak. Kind of moves your mouth formation around. And then also, ironically enough, my stepfather had a friend whose wife was a speech language pathologist, and she would kind of tell me about it, and I would hear stories about her clients, and so I was like, wow, this is kind of coming up a lot. And so I decided to do some research and look into it a bit more. And after doing research, I really found it to be something that I wanted to get into and basically have it as my course of study. And so that's what I decided to do. I like working with children, so I feel like it was a perfect career path for me. But with speech language pathology, there does tend to be changes, but overall, that's the reason why I chose this for myself. Right. So we are talking about home health. That is where you go into the patient's home. You're going into their environment, of course, and I feel like with home health, sometimes there's a lot of distractions, right?
A lot of distractions.
What are some of the distractions that you've seen?
So distractions with the family being there. So
Exactly.
You're seeing sisters, brothers, cousins, aunts, uncles, like
Anybody,
dogs,
friends, family,
pets.
friends over.
Yeah, like,
And
it's just not the client,
right.
Sometimes.
And the thing about that is, like, sometimes it's not a proper balance.
Yeah.
Where you have a private area where it's just you and your client.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to try to sometimes get that understanding with the parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the parent is not always willing to.
That's for sure.
Understand that, like, okay, it just needs to be me and
not
the client,
willing to be on the
patient.
same page. They are not willing to be on the same page. You have your pros and your cons, that because you have some parents, they are very, very ambitious. They're willing to work with you and also work with their child and like get their child to be motivated because they know that you're there for their child.
Mm-hmm.
So they want this interaction to be good. But you also have parents that like will kind of brush you off and like look at you like, oh, you're a speech therapist assistant.
Right. Or sometimes it's not. It's like it's where they don't understand that you're not playing with their child, that you're actually doing a lesson or something like that. And so they're like, oh, you guys are just playing, so his sibling can come and play too, where they just don't really understand that the proper balance are restrictions that need to be had, or
exactly.
Needs to be a designated area for the session. So sometimes that's like a big battle or a big understanding that needs to be had.
Yeah. So I think that parents' interaction is like a big key in like the setting, like the home healthcare setting. Like if you don't have like a good like your communication skills and like a good relationship, I think it's more like relationship.
Yeah, you want to build a rapport.
Yeah, a rapport. Yeah, definitely a rapport. So you want that relationship to be good. If it's not good, then the parents, there might be problems, conflict.
And then sometimes there's issues where there's language barriers. And so that may cause conflict or issues or just not smooth communication, basically. Where you can't properly get an understanding on the child's progress, or if you want to leave homework and exercises for them to go over, it's kind of difficult to explain those things because there is a barrier.
And this happens because depending on your city, you have like so many different cultures, and since you're going into the home setting, you may have people in the home that speaks different dialects, different languages, and it's different from yours. So that relationship and the language barrier, can go hand in hand sometimes, and sometimes it could kind of, if you don't speak the same language or don't have a good relationship, it could kind of go pull against the assistant, go against, you trying to get somewhere in the progress for the child. Yeah.
And so, what are your feelings about the patient? I feel like at times there's a good SLPA has to understand that every client is different. With the home health setting, depending on how your caseload is, you may have back-to-back sessions, and so you have to constantly adjust yourself for the type of client that you're having. Every client is not the same. And so I feel like, that's something that you really have to understand and get comfortable with. You have to be able to adapt yourself.
Yeah. Being able to adapt is really, really, essential, because as we were saying earlier, you have home health, you have, a setting, and you have cities that's diverse, so you have to know what works best for the client, know what works best for the family, and patient wise, you may get, once you're starting off in the as an assistant, you may get a caseload with over 10 to a good 11 clients. So it takes time to kind of adjust and get used to, but it's needed, very much necessary, to be able to adapt and adjust, because you want to kind of get the role and not be just left behind or too stressed, because it can bring stress.
Yeah. Also, in this setting, there's something to think about with cost for your various things, such as materials. I feel like materials is a big thing, because you want to make sure that you have the proper tools and things for your sessions and your activities that you have planned. I know in some companies that I've worked with, they have a storage room that you can kind of, rent out things or borrow things and bring it back. But the issue with that is that that's at a office or a clinic. You're constantly on the road in home health, and you're going from this place to that place to that place to this place. So you don't always have time in your schedule, nor is it on your route to go pick up materials from the clinic or this specific office or wherever it may be, the storage unit or wherever. So you want to have your own materials, and then oftentimes, you may not even be able to borrow things from your company. You might have to get everything yourself. So.
Yeah. And on that note, the pay. So you have materials and the cost of materials. Sometimes it may not be kind of on the same level as your pay. So you might get paid less than your cost of materials and the supply. So you have to be able to sometimes go in your own pocket and pay for materials. Yes, I know it may sound kind of oh, I'm using my money to pay for material and not the company money that they pay me, but it's just that you are the difference again between a speech therapist, certified speech therapist, and a speech therapist assistant. Pay difference is a big deal, because it's such a big gap. So what you'll be getting paid as a speech therapist completely cut in half, pay wise, for a speach therapy assistant.
Yeah, it varies. It may not be exactly half, but it's a figure of speech.
Mm-hmm.
But with the materials and pay, you always want to keep track of anything that you purchase or buy for tax purposes. You want to keep track of that. whether it be a trip to purchase uniforms or things of that sort. You always want to keep a record, a receipt, or anything that's coming out of your pocket, especially. And then also, you want to think about, like we said earlier, transportation. So transportation, I feel like, is a big issue with home health. There's rarely
And this
a company.
This is cost going. You adding that into your cost too. Okay.
Yeah.
So from that pay, you're adding transportation costs, material costs, and sometimes some settings and companies that you work for already have materials that you can borrow. So that's a good thing. That's a plus. But you have other companies that they kind of may require you to go in your pocket and buy materials. So it just depends and varies on where and what company you work for. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like back to the transportation, there's rarely companies that offer you to use a designated vehicle by them. I have seen companies that do that, but it is completely rare. Most companies will require for you to use your own vehicle, your own gas, your own miles from your own car, and travel from point A to point B to point C, point D, point E, like all over the place. And sometimes it's not in one area. You really want to keep that in mind. It's not always in one area. It can be anywhere. Most companies, they service a particular area. They try to stay like in a certain parameter, but sometimes they do kind of like widen it for certain clients. So if they need you to take this client, then you might have to go.
Or when you ask, like, if you could ask your supervisor, like, oh well, hey, I would like to have this area, and I would take on some more clients for pay.
I've tried that before. And sometimes you can ask, you may get it, you may not. Mm-hmm. So that's something that you have to be prepared for. Mm-hmm. And if you don't get it, you're going from certain area of town to another area of town. That you have to consider that does add up on your mileage, that does add up on your gas and things like that.
Transportation.
And then in addition to like materials and stuff like that, that's a lot of cost that's coming out.
Mm-hmm. Out your pay. Yeah. Because I know pay is like really important when it comes to.
Have you ever gotten like reimbursements for mileage or gas?
No, not at the company that I worked at. No.
I've gotten it once before. Well, with the company that I've worked with, it wasn't much that I felt like. Considering the amount of miles that I drive, because you do have to keep a mileage log. And you can clearly see, like, wow, I drove this much this month. And you can see it by a weekly basis also. Like, and you will be surprised by how that adds up. And then if they do reimburse you, and what I was getting reimbursed, it wasn't equal to those miles. So, you do have to be prepared if the company does or does not offer that, to come out of your pocket and have a budget set aside for that.
Yeah. So, like, in a nutshell, I would say that it is a very, wouldn't you say that it's like a very like rewarding
it's
career. It's a rewarding career because you can advance in the career. You can advance, and you could move from an SLPA to a speech therapist.
To me, I feel like the most rewarding thing on my end, me personally, is just being able to be with your client and seeing improvement. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, like that is just so crazy and so neat to see your client just improving and show like a upbeat attitude, excitement, happiness.
Progress.
Whereas before, they might have been a little timid because they had, they were dealing with a disorder and they didn't know the strategies to kind of make it through and it's just so amazing to see the progress. Really, to me, that's the best reward.
Yeah, so we're definitely, as speech therapy assistants, we're making a difference, and like we're changing these clients' lives. Like we're a big part of how we could like mold their attitude, and their personality and like their lifestyle. So you know like progress is good progress, like
Right.
good progress. Yeah.
Right. Oh, I want to go back to like the patients. Like, have you ever had? I know we address like patients, but like with dealing with them when we have to adjust ourselves. But sometimes like the patient has to adjust to you. Have you ever had that experience?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's not just with the patient, it's with the parents too.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the parents have to kind of like warm up to you, because they know that like, hey, you are dealing with my child
And coming into my home.
and coming into my home. So this is very personal, private space for the family, so being able to like have that trust system, and with you and the client, and also the family and parent, is it's something that you kind of like have to learn to have, and yeah, with like patients, or some patients are not so easily open up to you, and kind of tell you everything, and because they're coming from, okay, this disorder, how may this person that I don't know, like, how would they look at me?
Yeah, and then I think sometimes it's also a struggle with behavior. Behavior is a very big thing with speech therapy sessions, because I feel like uh, with the parents and with the therapist, you have to have an understanding and a common ground that we have to know what good behavior is and what behavior is going to be accepted in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, if the parent at home is allowing a child to do something, and when they get into the therapy session and they're still allowing the child to do that, they're not going to necessarily listen to you do that. It's gonna be a back and forth issue as far as behavior goes.
Mm-hmm. Behavior, yeah. And you're working with so many different disorders, so you're gonna have different behaviors. You might have a behavior that's all the way up there on the spectrum, and that's a whole nother topic, but you have other behaviors where it's already molded by the parents, because what they how their reaction is with the parent, is pretty good. So when they meet this other person that's kind of like a stranger to them, they kind of take into them a little bit more easier.
Right.
This is not always the case. Sometimes you have that first encounter with that the patient could be like, the behavior could be like crazy, and you're just like, oh, I'm done, like I want to give up, like this is not for me. No, I can't do it.
Yeah. But I mean, kind of to address the pros and cons, I would say a pro for me is, again, seeing the client's progress, and to me that's a reward. So I would say that's a pro. What do you think is a con?
A con would be how the treatment of how between you and the parent, how they may accept you, as an assistant, what they may say if it's rude, and kind of, make you want to, like, I guess, back off, because you feel like, oh, I'm just here trying to do my job. But if it's a negative, attitude, it's gonna make you feel like, you know, well, why are they having this attitude when I'm trying to make progress?
Yeah. I feel like a con can be, for me, because, you know, with driving, some people may love it, some people may not like it. But when your schedule is all over the city and you live in a big city, then, you know, that can become a problem. And so I would consider that a con. But, I mean, really, it's just to the person's preference, really. Yeah.
Yeah, because to some people it can be, you know, it could be good because they may like driving. They might like driving a lot and seeing different areas. But as a con, it could cut into costs because you're looking at
a lot of gas,
a
lot of miles in your car.
So it just depends. Really, it depends
Traffic.
on the traffic. True. It depends on the person and like what their tolerant level is, like what they want to, you know, tolerate, what they don't want to tolerate. And you have some, you know, most of the time you have this option, you know, to say like, hey, this is a little too much. This is, you know, nah, I probably could deal with this client. You know, I could deal with this client. I could see, you know, I believe that I could help this client get to this progress. You know, sometimes you have that option, and, you know, definitely speak up and, like, you know, let your company know, you know, because you're really doing this for you. The whole goal is to see progress, right? With the client.
Yeah.
So if you're willing and, you know, willing to speak up and say, hey, this and this and this and this is going well with the client. This and this and this and this is not going with the client. I could deal with this. I can't deal with that. You know, sometimes it could turn out backfire on the assistant.
Yeah. But you always want to remain patient, professional, because, you know, you're dealing with clients that have disorders, so you have to be patient, you have to be understanding, you have to be compassionate. You know, those are all characteristics that you have to have in this career path. I mean, if you don't possess those, then really, you know, this is probably not a career path for you. But I mean, that about sums everything up. You know, I feel like if you guys have any questions or any concerns, you can comment on this video below. Also, please subscribe.
Yeah,
and like our video.
Like.
Yes. But yeah, just reach out to us with any questions or concerns, and we have no problem with answering or anything like that. And if you guys have any suggestions on another video, let us know.
Definitely let us know.
All right, bye-bye, you guys.